9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Society for Canadian Women in Science and Technology and Science World Girls in STEAM Unusual Careers Networking event. My name is Nicole, and I'll be one of your Science World hosts for the day. I would like to begin by gratefully acknowledging that we at Science World are located on the traditional and unceded territory of the Musqueam, the Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh. Just before we dive in, I want to take a moment to remind everyone that this is a safe space. So please keep comments in the chat respectful and relevant. Why don't we start today by testing out our chat? Where is everyone joining from today? We're going to start today with a quick introduction from each one of our amazing mentors. You will then have a chance to join the stream of your choice to learn a bit more about their careers. All mentors will be visiting every stream, so you will get a chance to ask questions and chat with everyone. There will be 3 simultaneous streams with 3 mentors and a host in each, as you can see on the slide on your screen. Each session will last for 15 minutes. Then we will give our mentors a chance to move to the next session. Once you participants enter your chosen stream, you don't have to move anymore. Our amazing mentors will come to you. There will be 3 rotations. Our technicians, Larry and Brian, will be monitoring the chats. If you have any technical issues, they would be happy to assist. We ask that you keep comments in the chat and questions section respectful and relevant to the topics being discussed. Now, before we welcome our guests today, we would also like to thank SAP and Acuitas for their generous support of these events. Let's meet our mentors for today. So we're going to bring up a few of them at a time. I'm going to ask that they let us know their name, the type of work that they do, and one surprising or unusual thing that maybe you've had the chance to do in your career. Welcome to Catherine and Teresa and Jeannie. So Catherine, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. My name is Catherine Westerlund. I am a tunnel engineer in training based here in Vancouver, British Columbia. And one interesting thing I've gotten to do in my career has been being more than a mile underground inside a mine as they were actively excavating, and you could hear all of the rock moving around you. It was very exciting, but a little scary.
Awesome. Jeannie, I think you're next up on my screen. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, folks. My name is Jeannie, and I am a biomedical engineer. I'm a PhD student out at BC Cancer, and I build devices that help us find earlier cancers. So I build really long endoscopes with kind of like a camera at the end that lets us look inside all sorts of different organs to see if there's something wrong. And I like to think that I'm a different type of tunneling than Catherine, looking at really little small tunnels. But one cool thing I've had the opportunity to do is to be in the operating room and to see a lot of different procedures and work with some doctors and nurses and the whole swath of things where I get to see what the devices I build get to be used.
Awesome. Thank you. And Teresa, why don't you give us a little insight into your job?
Hello, my name is Teresa. My voice is gone today. I'm a chemical engineer. I did a PhD in mechanical engineering. I also did a master in reservoir engineering, which is related to extract oil. So I do research, like trying to understand or design new things. And cool things about my job is that I had the opportunity to look at things at the smallest possible scale, like micron, submicron is 1 millionth of a millimeter, kind of, a million of a meter. And also I can see things in a big scale, like in the field. So that's cool. You can see how amazing things look at the scales that you can imagine, like thinner than a hair. Right. So that's cool. It's engineering.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. So we're going to bring up our next group of mentors and we'll hear a little bit about their work. Wonderful. Wonderful. All right. So Lorraine, you're first on my screen. Why don't you introduce yourself?
I was one of the first 3 medical and science reporters in TV in Canada. And I've combined a love of media with a love of science at university and did a lot of different university classes. One of the neatest things about my job is I have the right to call anyone anywhere in the world and say, what are you working on? Or can you explain this principle to me? The worst they can say is no. And the best, I get to talk to Nobel Prize winners who've accomplished so much and new, young, exciting people who are very excited about what they're doing. So I get to learn from the best and the brightest and then figure out how to make it plain language and explain it to people who don't work in that specific field. And it's a wonderful privilege.
Awesome. Ji Young, how about you introduce yourself to us as well?
Perfect. Hi, everyone. My name is Ji Young. I'm a scientist who helps people living with heart transplant. My pronouns are she, her. And one of the interesting things I've done in my career is that I get to watch heart surgeons take heart tissues from patients. And for me to basically collect those biopsies or tissues, and then and look with molecular tools we have to understand what is exactly going on. I'm excited to be here today, and I look forward to meeting all of you. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. And Lindsay.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lindsay. I'm a medical laboratory technologist here in Montreal. I've just graduated, so I'm just starting my career. And something that I find super cool about my job, particularly with the pandemic, is that here in Quebec, probably 98% of the COVID PCR tests were performed, analyzed, and reported by technologists. So we played a huge role in protecting public health and helping, the government make policy to protect their citizens. But we're in the lab. We know no one knows about us, but we're the little superheroes wearing capes.
Awesome. Thank you all. All right, we're going to bring up our last group, a little bit of information about their careers. Welcome, welcome. Awesome. So Kylie, why don't you start us off? Introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. My name's Kylie. My pronouns are she, her, and I am a geologist and science journalist. So like my friend on the last screen, I started out my career as a geologist working in the field, and then I've transitioned into communications and journalism. So one of the coolest things I've ever done is flying around the Arctic in a helicopter, taking soil samples for diamond exploration. That was just an incredible experience and something that I'll always look back on as a really fun and different thing to do.
That's awesome. Fantastic. Miriam, how about you introduce yourself?
Hi, so my name is Miriam. I'm a PhD graduate recently at University of Ontario, Western Ontario. I work on trying to figure out how the magnetic field in planets is generated. And one cool thing that this allows me to do is to travel across the world and meet different people in our field and see what they get to do in their labs.
Awesome. That's amazing. Cool. And Alyssa, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, my name's Alyssa. I'm an environmental engineer in Calgary, and I work on contaminated sites. So anything from a dry cleaner to a gas station to an oil and gas well site. I work on investigating those and then cleaning up any contamination we find. My cool thing is also to do with helicopters. We have well sites that are so far out, no road goes anywhere near them, and we have to fly up there to get our samples and our information and watch out for bears. Bears are a big factor when you're in the middle of the woods.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for taking that time to introduce yourselves. Now, I don't know about everybody else. I'm very excited to get in and meet everyone a little bit more. So it is now going to be time for you to choose your stream. So you can stay here in this stream, or you can move over to one of the other 2 streams, which we're going to link under this stream and in the chat. Remember, though, all of our mentors are going to visit all 3 streams, so it makes no difference which one you start in, but a room with fewer people, you'll have more chances to ask questions. So make sure to spread out between all 3 of the streams. Now, we do ask that you remain in your chosen stream for the rest of the session. Our technicians and our hosts will let everyone know when it's time for the mentors to rotate. And if you have any questions, Larry and Brian are available to help you out in the chat. So we're going to open up the streams now. All right, so we'll give everybody a few minutes to jump into their chosen stream, and then we will go in and get started. All right, so I'm going to be your host here in Stream 1. I am also joined by Pooja, who will be facilitating in the chat. So we are starting off this session with the panel Building the Future. All right, so welcome, Catherine, Teresa, and Jeannie. So we've heard a little bit about what you do in the introduction. So let's start off with a question to everyone. But before we do that, audience, this is your chance. If you have any burning questions about the mentors, their journeys, or their careers, enter them in the chat now, and we will read them live to our panel. All right. So, Catherine, Teresa, and Jeannie, I'll start off with a question to everyone. Let's maybe hear a little bit about how you got started in this career. What was kind of one thing that drove you to pursue this branch? So if anybody wants to volunteer to answer that right off the bat, or I'm going to randomly select you.
Sure, maybe I'll start. So I did my undergrad at UBC in electrical engineering, and both of my parents actually went to UBC and did engineering. So I feel like it was a little destined for me, although they laughed at me when I went into electrical engineering because they said that one is hard and boring. I thought it was lots of fun, though. So I always loved math and science in school. And I knew that engineering was taking that math and science and then building stuff with it, which was very attractive to me. I love to do things with my hands and to think about how I could take something from theoretical to the real world. And so that's how I landed in engineering. And then biomedical engineering is such a growing field. It's really exciting. There's so many different technologies we can leverage to really improve health outcomes for everyone. And so that's how I landed in that world. And what I do most of the time is make images, which is, I think, a good way for me to sort of connect in that engineering to some of the art stuff that I'm also interested in.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, Catherine or Teresa, how did you get started?
Well, I had I guess a very similar start to Jeannie. So we both went to the University of British Columbia, but I did my undergraduate degree in geological engineering. So I got started all through high school. I was really interested in kind of math and science, and not just like knowing things, but like using kind of the tools that physics and math gives you to solve real life problems. And so people were like, oh, go into engineering. I was like, what's that? And they were like, no, you'll just like it. Like, just go into engineering. You'll figure it out. And so I got to UBC, and there's a bunch of different disciplines that you can go into there. And I was really attracted to kind of the more environmental, civil, geological side of things. And I ended up talking to students in different fields and settled on geological engineering just because it was a really cool mix of the tools that physics and math gives us to construct items, and the natural world and how kind of the things that we as humans are building and how those interact with the spaces around us that have been here for billions and billions of years. So that's how I ended up here. How I ended up in tunneling specifically was a couple people from my company, Mott McDonald, came and gave some guest lectures on stuff. I did some co-op placements, and I was like, this is just really cool. I just want to do this for the rest of my life. And they were like, do you want to work here? I was like, yeah, I do. Like, let's just do it. So, and I've been here for the past couple of years. It's been pretty fun.
Awesome. That's fantastic. Thank you. Teresa, tell us how you got started.
Okay, I will try with this voice. I go today. I was initially doing chemical engineering, and so I went to different trainings like co-ops. One is a cement plant. It was super cool. Everything was huge, but then I realized it was too dusty for me. Like you end up like almost cemented at the end of the day. So, and then you take off the mask and your face was all hair, everything. So I say, well, not this kind of job. But many people were there for 20 years, 30 years. Okay, not my job. Then I did another co-op. That's why it's important to do those kind of training when you are a student in a research center. And I fell in love. I could be weekends studying, reading papers, reading articles. On weekends, on vacations, I will use my vacations to go to that research center and live there and go to the labs. Unbelievable. Looking back, a teenager in a research center on the weekends and summer. I mean, that was my thing, research. Definitely. So you had to discover what is it that you love. And for sure, you discover something that you love, you will find a way to be useful to humanity, to others, to be helpful. Then I did a master. I was kind of selected to do a master that I didn't want to do, but I had to do it because it was part of my job. Now you have to do this master. So I did it in reservoir engineering. So I learned more about how to extract oil from the ground. And I think oil fuels, they bring a lot of quality of life for people. They can warm their houses. People can have a car. They can go in a bus, go in an airplane to a different place, have foods that we won't have, like eating bananas that we don't grow in here. So I think we just need to be more conscious how we do it. But I think oil industry has been very helpful. So I was there for a while doing research in there. And then I came to I did a PhD in Brazil. Then I'm originally from Venezuela. Then I came to Canada to doing oil and gas in Alberta. And now I'm doing carbon capture here in Vancouver, in Squamish. So I'm doing carbon capture to reduce the concentration of CO2 in the environment as much as possible, doing research on that. So it's a long path, but to tell you never know where you're going to end. Just discover what you love and you're going to be fine.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, that's really great. What I love is that you all had that similar, you just really got to dive in and discover what it is that speaks to you. And I love that advice. So we've got a question from the chat here. Now, nobody's asking, but what is a typical day like for you? If anybody wants to volunteer, or I'm more than happy to randomly select on smiles. Okay,
sure. My world varies a lot day to day, depending on what is happening and what projects are online and what is waiting. But I can tell you about last Wednesday specifically, because I think it was a pretty good one. So Wednesday I got to work. I work out at VGH at the BC Cancer Research Institute. We had a clinic that day, so we were imaging someone to see if we could see early signs of cancers. We're actually working on a cervical imaging study, so we're trying to find the earliest cancer so that the treatment can be like less invasive. Because normally they just cut out the cancer. So if you find them when they're smaller, it's better for everyone involved. So we had to get all of our tools ready. We had to make sure that our imaging system was all calibrated and ready to go. So lots of walking back and forth the length of VGH with different boxes of things and making sure that everything was all ready so that we could take the best images possible. And then the patient arrived and the doctor arrived, and we talked to them for a while. We imaged, and then we took everything back and we spent a long time cleaning up, because when you're working with biohazardous waste, you spend lots of time washing things. And then I spent the rest of the afternoon looking at the images and seeing what we could see in there, and doing a little bit of some fancy image processing stuff. So that was my Wednesday. That's not every day. Sometimes I'm writing, sometimes I'm in the lab doing experiments. Sometimes we're trying to make our images better by fixing our lasers or our other equipment. Or I'm working with a co-op student or some other students in our group. But that was, I think, a pretty good one on the record of my week.
Awesome, thank you. I'm going to jump over to Catherine while Teresa gets settled.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. So my days are a little bit varied as well. So it really depends on what's going on. We've got a couple projects in construction right now, and so sometimes you get a call at 9 o'clock in the morning. It changes your whole conception of your day. But typically, I'll get into the office. I'll respond to a couple of emails, stuff that's happened kind of overnight, because we're an international company, and so like while I'm asleep, all of our colleagues in the UK are still working along on stuff, and so they'll email me. It's 3 o'clock in the morning here, but it's perfectly reasonable for them to email there. So I'll wake up, see what they've been up to, or we respond back to them, so that then when I'm going to sleep, they'll wake up, and it's a whole process. And then typically working on some engineering modeling, engineering calculations. So working in different software packages, trying to model kind of how a tunnel underground might converge, what kind of support classes you might need to kind of prevent it, because you're going to excavate it for a purpose normally. And so you don't want it to just collapse in. It's kind of lame. So we try and avoid that. And then we have a couple projects in construction. So maybe in the afternoon, something exciting is happening on site. We want an inspector on site to be kind of overseeing that. And so I might head over to site, take a couple photos, write some notes down, come back, write everything up that I saw, send that out to people, look at some kind of instrumentation and monitoring data to make sure that everything that we've built so far is kind of performing how we expected it to, like in the modeling itself. And then that's kind of how my days go. So lots of varied things, but it's really exciting.
Awesome. That sounds great. Thank you. Teresa, let's hear about your day. These are all very different sounding days. It's great.
Yes, it's interesting. My days is something similar to Jean and Catherine. I used to start, I have kids, so I had to start the day feeding them, running, not be late for school, prepare lunch for them, for me, and my husband trying to help there, helping them. And then after that initial high boost of energy, everybody's in the car, I drop them where they have to be. I start my day around 9 a.m. So like my colleagues, Janine and Catherine, I will be checking email. Let's see, what do I have? What is priority today? Sometimes I prepare the day before. As soon as you get up, you have a meeting at 9, or you have to start an experiment. And to start experiment, you have to put the chiller to, I don't know, to 0 degrees C. It will take a couple of hours. In that time, I will prepare solutions, or maybe that day is not lab day, maybe that they have to look at results and prepare a report or a presentation to discuss in a meeting in the afternoon. And then, so it's like maybe between lab, analyzing results, analyzing samples themselves, like Jenny said, taking picture of samples, using equipment to measure properties of the samples. And then at 5, I had to run and pick up my kids. And then, so that's a typical day. Every day is a change between computer, lab, meetings. Sometimes, not right now, but sometimes in my previous job, I had to go to the field and see what is going on in certain plant or certain experiment. Is a huge scale, like a field scale.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a day. The hardest part is the mom part, believe me. Then I go to work. Okay, now I'm gonna relax and do my thing.
Totally. Awesome. Okay, thank you. We're almost out of time. We have about 30 seconds. So I'm going to give you each one sentence to tell us all something that you love about what you do, something that you really were like, yes, this is what made me want to do it, or something that's just super interesting. So you have one more sentence that you can share with us. Rapid fire, go. Oh, I put you all on the spot.
Got only one sentence. Got to think about something good. I would say what I love the most about what I do is the people I work with. I get the opportunity to work with scientists and engineers, physicists and statisticians and doctors and nurses and the whole gamut. And everyone that I work with is excellent. And I love working in a team-based environment. So that is how I knew it was the right place for me. And that's something that in the field of biomedical engineering holds true in general, in that it's really interdisciplinary. You get to work with folks with all sorts of different expertise. And you got to work as a team or it doesn't work.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. And then you can head off and switch to your next stream. So Catherine, your one sentence and then we'll swap. Thank you, Jeannie.
The world is so big. Tunnels are so cool. You get to go underground. That's a cool place I've never been before this. And it's so exciting every day to get to build like the subway project that I'm going to ride to work in 5 years, the water conveyance system that Vancouver is going to rely on in for the next kind of 50, 100 years of being alive. Like, so many things are tunnels that we don't even realize are tunnels. Also, when we drill boreholes and you pull up that material, that's material probably no human has ever seen before. Those are samples that are so old and so complicated that it's just so exciting to me. So I think it's fun.
Awesome. Thank you. Teresa, you have like 20 seconds tops.
20 seconds. If you want to discover what it is that you like, you have to try different things. You have to try music. If you are an engineer, you have to try staying in the desk, going to the field, doing research, going to the tunnels, and then you will find the one you love for sure. You will know because you will be happy doing it. You will do it for free if you could, so that's the.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. All right, let's bring up our next group of mentors. So let's welcome Kylie and Alyssa and Miriam. Sorry to take time. So welcome. We are now at our Investigating Thriving Spaces group. So again, audience, if you've got any burning questions for our wonderful new mentors, please feel free to pop those in the chat. All right, let's see. Any questions going to pop up, or are we going to jump in with my questions right away? All right, maybe we're going to start off with the best, easiest first question. How did you get started in your career? Remind us what it is that you're doing, how you got there, what did that path look like? And then audience, if you could throw some questions in the chat, that'd be fantastic. So does anybody want to jump in first, or do you want me to randomly select based on smiles? Oh, Miriam, sorry, yours was the biggest right off the bat. Go first.
Sure. So I got started in earth science very young. So my work now is to look at how the magnetic field in planets is created. And so to be able to do this, I had to go to school and do science classes, and then all the physics and chemistry and math classes. And then I had to go and do a bachelor's in physics and also geophysics in university. And then I got to do a PhD in the same field. So I got started initially going to camps in the Cosmodome in Montreal. So that is simulations of how life would be on different planets. And so that got me really excited in the earth science field in general.
Cool. That sounds awesome. Thank you. All right. Kylie, your smile looked slightly bigger for a moment. You get to answer next. Started.
Got to keep my non-plus face on. Hi, everyone. I'm Kylie. My pronouns are she, her. I started out, I wanted a subject at first year university that wasn't math because I lost interest in math in year 12. And my advisor said, what about earth science? And I went into the first class in earth science in university And I had this really inspiring lecturer who just lit this fire in me to be interested in the Earth and how the Earth works. And then I became a geologist, worked in mineral exploration, looking for the ore deposits of the future, the mines of the future. And after a while, I went back to school and did a master's in science communication, because I'm also really interested in telling stories about the Earth and about Earth scientists. So I started out with as a geologist and transitioned into being a science journalist and a communicator.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Alyssa, not saying that your smile is smaller than the rest, but
It just only lasts for a second and then it goes away. I am an environmental engineer, so definite lifelong interest in science since I was a child and the environment. But once I got to university, I sort of did more general engineering classes the first 2 years, and then when I had to pick my minor and picked environmental, then I knew I was in the right place. And I also did co-op work terms throughout my university that gave me a chance to try different jobs in the industry while I was still going to school, which really helped focus me as well.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Still looking for questions in the chat, but let's maybe talk about, is there something that you are super excited to see in your industry that maybe you think might be happening in the next 5 years or something? Because it sounds like we're all looking at and working with some pretty big things. So I would love to hear, is there something you're super excited about? I'm going to let you jump in.
I'll go first. I'm super excited about gender and other diversity in mining and mineral exploration. It has stubbornly been about 15% women and 85% men in mining and mineral exploration for the last decade at least, since we've been measuring these things. So we really, really need more girls who are interested in all the different subjects, from like robotics, environmental engineering, geology, health and safety, all those things, to be interested in finding the resources that we need for the future. So the copper that's going to make the wires that transmit the electricity, the silver that goes into the solar panels, the metallurgical coal that goes into concrete and steel and all that kind of thing. So I'm really excited about talking to people who want to get into our industry and make it look more like the general public.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. I'm going to go to Alyssa.
I think for me, the environmental industry is changing a lot right now. A lot of my clients are oil and gas companies, and they have well sites or batteries or facilities that they need to clean up, and that's my job. So I think as we're sort of, as a society, are starting to move away a bit from the oil and gas way of doing things. It's going to be interesting to see how that all pans out. I think Kylie said this in the previous panel, people often don't realize how serious the laws are and how much work actually these companies have to do if they contaminate a site. They have to leave it exactly how it was before they ever set foot on it. It takes a lot of work and a lot of money. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what the volume of work is. Those sites will be there till someone cleans them up, regardless if they're making new ones or not. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. All right, Miriam.
Thank you. I am very excited about the new findings that we're doing about exoplanets, so planets outside our solar system. So we found one actually recently that looks like Earth's cousin. And so if we keep studying them, then we can see if any of them would be habitable for us, or at least not too far away from us that we could think about moving there eventually.
That's cool. That would have blown my 12-year-old mind. Like, that speaks to my 12-year-old. Awesome. Okay, so we've got a new question in the chat here. Let's talk about, what is the hardest part of your job? I think that's great information to know going into a new career or choosing a topic to study further. So yeah, what is something tough about your job?
I can go first.
Cool.
Thank you for the question. I think the question itself is hard, and I think that says about what the hard part of our work is to vulgarize it, so make it understandable to other people. I think that is well, Kylie must be better at it than I am, but for me, describing what I'm doing to younger people, so trying to using more common terms, is the hardest part of my job.
Totally. And you never would think about that until you're like in that position, right? Absolutely.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I agree 100%. It's the I'd call it the hustle. It's like the looking for funding to continue your research, or asking, in my job, for example, asking big companies for just a little bit of their budget so we can do a project to like attract, young people into our industry, or hold a seminar on equity, diversity, and inclusion, or something like that. So it's that hustle of asking for funding or asking for permission to do these really important things. So yeah, it's the hustle and the communication piece.
Totally.
Mine, I would say, is similar. One thing is just prioritizing. So on days when you're super busy and a bunch of different people and clients need you, trying to figure out what order to do things in. And then secondarily, just sometimes you have bad news for clients. We thought that we were done the project and we're not, and now we need more money, or we need to figure out how to do this. Sometimes those are hard conversations, but you get used to it with experience.
Yeah, those are super insightful answers too. And like we hit on 3 really big, different, tough things about working in science. Absolutely. All right. So what advice would you give to a 12-year-old who is maybe interested in your line of work? I am curious.
Since I'm off mute, I'll start. I got to get quicker on the mute button. As a 12-year-old, I would say go with the subjects that attract your attention and that you feel passionate about. Like if carefully ruling lines and doing geometry like really makes you happy to see that order, or maybe like physics and like the big picture planetary kind of thing, or code and playing computer games, like that's huge in our industry because we don't operate mine trucks, we don't drive them underground as much anymore. Like when the 12-year-olds of today are in the workforce, we're going to be using joysticks and we're going to be programming those trucks to go underground and get the ore and bring it back. Like we're not going to be, driving. There's not going to be people like just driving down. So go with whatever you're passionate about. Like if you love the environment, then, join a group that gets you outside, so you can see lots of landscapes and lots of rocks. And then if that translates to geology in the classroom, then go for it. But my advice is like stick with what you're passionate about and put in the effort for those subjects.
Awesome. Thank you. Alyssa, yeah.
Yeah, I would say also don't feel like you have to decide exactly your path at 12. I think all of us can tell you that it feels like it's like you need to choose that so young, but we all have moved through several careers. And when I was 12, I wanted to be a physiotherapist. And then I saw that they only took 30 students from all of Saskatchewan every year into the physiotherapy program. And I was like, I don't like those odds. What else could I do that uses math and science? And we kind of, through schooling and work, you just kind of find your way to what works for you. So definitely use your passions, but don't be afraid to change. We all change paths, and it's okay.
Awesome. That's great advice. Yeah. Miriam, what about you? What's your advice?
I did not know what I wanted to do at 12, but what I know is that I had to get out of my comfort zone and I had to ask people what they're doing and how they got to their place and how their lifestyle looked. And that would help me understand what I wanted to do. But I could not give you a job title and tell you I wanted to be that. So my advice is to talk to people and get out of your comfort zone.
Awesome. That's fantastic advice. Okay, so we have maybe like 45 seconds to a minute left. So if there is any kind of last words you want to give, any extra advice, any yay science, this is your moment.
Following on from that last question, everyone who's attending this event is already doing good things. Like just hearing all those different options. Like I didn't have that when I was younger. I kind of just saw like teacher or scientist, or like there were very like small directions, but going to things like this and hearing about different combinations of careers and paths, I think is really great.
Awesome. Thank you. That's a great place. We're going to wrap up. I'm going to ask that we all switch to our next streams. Sorry, Miriam, Melissa, but thank you so much for sharing all that wonderful advice and information. All right, so we are going to bring up our next set of mentors. So let us welcome Lindsay, Ji Young, and Lorraine. Welcome. We are now in the Advancing Our Health group. So audience, same as last time, if you've got any burning questions for our mentors, their journeys, their careers, you can enter them in the chat. I'll read them out in the panel. Awesome. So Lindsay, Lorraine, Ji Young, let's get started. I like to start all of these question sessions with tell us a little bit about your journey into your career. How did you get started? Was there that aha moment? This is what I'm going to do. I would love to hear about that. Ji Young, you looked really excited when I said that, so I'm going to ask you answer first.
Oh, sorry. I was smiling because we just discussed.
Oh, just answered it, right?
Yeah, at length. I got into science. Not because I knew from the get-go that this was my calling, so to speak. I do think it is now, but I think there is more of a deliberate decision that went into deciding that I want to pursue this because I love this. But in college, I think probably most of you could relate. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do or what to do with my life at that point. And then I tried a few different things. I sort of met up with people, asked them about their jobs, and one thing that I did that I found to be really useful was to actually write about myself. So a lot of it was just self-discovery, understanding my personality, my preferences, like my pace for work. And then when I sort of look for career options that sort of would jive best with what I've got, I basically came up with a short list of things, and then scientist happened to be one of them. So, but I think I think as most of you could probably also relate, I think ideas of career is changing quite rapidly. It's not like you get one job for the rest of your life until you retire. We do have to continuously reinvent ourselves in various different ways. And I'm sure that the next chapter of my career may look quite different from what I'm doing. But so that's how I got started in science. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm going to ask Lorraine next because, Lindsay, I have an additional question to tag on with your journey as well. So, Lorraine, if you want to tell us a little bit about how you got into your career.
I did public speaking for fun all the way through high school. I worked on student newspapers in high school, university. I worked at radio stations. I did all that stuff, but that was just for fun. I wanted to be a doctor, or at least I thought I did. And I worked at our family doctor's office one summer, and it was really fun lancing boils. I loved that, and doing the office work, but I saw what a doctor did, and it's not a job I'd be happy doing. And I saw my friends who did go into medicine, these bright, creative people who had to put the blinders on, and they really couldn't take them off until they were 34, and they sacrificed so much of life. They sacrificed so much creativity, and for me, that would have been soul destroying. So I kicked around for a long time, and finally near the end of my 30s, I'd lost a job when it became permanent because it paid enough that the director thought a man should have it, and really kicked around. And finally, through using my network, through follow-up calls and some gumption, I ended up, they made a job for me in a big television newsroom. And I was one of the first 3 broadcast science journalists in the country. So I really had to make my way and convince my boss that, no, people are really interested in this. but it was a great start. And I went on and produced and hosted my own science series that the CBC network picked up. And I've raised a child, I've done elder care, and I'm back as a print journalist, still doing some broadcasting, a lot of public speaking, and even some plain language translation. And that's the thing is your palette of skills is never wasted. And sometimes you need to pivot. So you gather them up and you do something else. So you know how to knit, but there's nothing for knitting, maybe crocheting will work out. And it's like that in the job place too.
That's awesome. Thank you. So Lindsay, as you're talking about your path, we also have a question from Katie here, just asking for your advice on where you would recommend getting a PhD in psychology, what kind of steps you would take to work towards that PhD. If you could add that into your answer, that'd be great.
Sure. Hi, Katie. Thank you for your question. I'll answer about my path first, and then I'll touch on the PhD. So I graduated high school thinking I was going to go to law school. So I did a degree in liberal arts from college, and then I started an undergrad in psychology because I was a little bit too young, I felt, to go to law school. So I wanted a bachelor's degree in between. And I took some neuroscience classes and I fell in love, and my trajectory entirely changed. I worked a little bit in a neuroscience lab at university, but I didn't want to go into academia and do a PhD. So I took some time off. I moved away for a while, and then I came back to go back to school. And because when I was in school, I didn't like math. I loved science, and I was so intrigued by science, but I felt this huge block to getting there. I bit the bullet and I did my my math classes, and it turns out I love to do math. So as an adult, I found it a lot easier to face those fears and to break through those barriers, and it was quite a success for me. Then I applied to the biomedical program. I got in. I did it in 3 years, and so I do not see the time that I spent away from school as wasted. It was very valuable for me, and it helped me find ultimately what I wanted to do. In terms of the PhD question, it really depends on what your PhD, what you want to study, and where you are and what kind of resources you have to, if you're living in a city that doesn't have a large university with a PhD program, you can always research other cities or other towns where you are. Often, if there's a topic you're particularly interested in, you can look, you can see who is researching that topic, and you can apply, to them directly for their supervision. So it is a big question to ask, and I think you should maybe start with thinking about what you would like to study under the big umbrella of psychology.
Awesome. Thank you. I love that all of your paths are also very wrapped up in really great sound advice in how you kind of made your way through that we could apply to our own lives as well. So thank you for including that advice. So kind of related to what Ji-Young was saying at the beginning, we've got a question here about, you said that a lot of it was writing about yourself and that self-discovery, and like also similar to Lorraine talking about how you just kind of got to pivot, right? And you might need to try out these new things. So I'm curious if you have, what are some maybe like suggested questions that you could kind of ask yourself to do that pivoting, or to find that self-discovery, or to take that time away? And what kind of reflection questions were you asking yourselves in those moments? If anybody wants to jump in. Ji-Young, yeah. Unmute.
Could someone else go first?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I'll give it a go.
Saying, I want to answer.
Follow the same rules for meeting friends or meeting a partner. Go do things you're interested in, whether it's reading or searching on the internet or finding groups that do this. Volunteer for an organization that you're interested in. If you like geology, they'd be glad of help at meetings, and ask questions, ask opinions, and start a conversation with, could I ask for advice, please? Because 1, people never mind being asked for advice. 2, you're starting the relationship with a compliment. And 3, you're likely to get something pretty useful. You don't have to take it. But if you add up all these bits of advice over time, you may find out that it coalesces into something. But try stuff, taste stuff. Your 20s are for trying things. And get different jobs. I had a summer job working in a newsroom at CBC once. I had a summer job working for a family doctor. I've had all these interesting jobs. And one winter when I had no income, I used my EI as a Canada Council grant to learn how to produce a television show, because I ran into a friend networking who said, we need another TV show. Is there anything you could come up with? I gathered a crew, some of whom were volunteers, so I learned management skills. And all these things add up, and be ready to change, because we'll have 6 different careers in our lifetime, not just slightly different, but completely different. But everything you've gathered into your palette of skills, you're going to need those, and it'll be interesting. Give yourself permission to try.
That's awesome. Thank you. Lindsay, you have some words of advice, some of those good self-reflection questions when you're taking that step back and making those choices?
Yeah, so it's a little bit cheesy, but I kind of like to look at my life as a toolbox and acquiring skills to help me in things that I might not anticipate. And so when I was doing my internships in my last year of my program, I had to meet a lot of people. I had to learn to work with a lot of personalities. And from all the things that I did in prior to that helped me, because I was able to, you know, from the summer jobs I had to, you know, people that I met in my life, learn how to talk to people who you don't see eye to eye in, first of all, or talk to people who you don't share any interests in, but learn how to ask interesting questions that may lead to something that you don't anticipate. And also something that's a little bit scary to do is just putting yourself out there. And especially like as a young woman and as, you know, someone who's just learning about who they are, that can be quite daunting. But the worst someone can say is no. You know, if you send an email and say, hey, I'm really interested, do you need help? And they go, no, sorry. You go, thank you very much for your time. Please let me know if you need any help. Like always making yourself available and knowing, you know, following the path that you find really interesting and being authentic to what you think you want to do has always served me really well. Not to say I haven't made mistakes, but following those simple rules I find very helpful.
That's fantastic advice. Yeah, thank you. All right, Ji Young, what were some of those questions you were asking yourself?
Well, thank you for your question, Pooja. I personally found, you know, because I talk to students quite often, and you know, and through conversations, you know, with them, and now reflecting back on what I've done, I've noticed that for me at least, it was really useful to understand the distinction between what I'm good at and what I like. Those two things, you know, may or may not be the same for you. And it's fine either way. But I think it's really good to know yourself, you know, what it is that you're good at and what it is that you like. And, you know, and try to find that sweet spot where you could sort of, you know, find, you know, where these two things meet. But when I say, you know, when I say what you like, I also find it to be really helpful to not only know here or think that you like something, but I think it's really important to watch yourself, like how you feel after you do something, or how you know, does, you know, if you did something, did that energize you? Did that, you know, was it just, or was it draining, or or did you feel alive after doing that, or did you not? And I think there are many more layers than just what you think you know or what you think you like. And I think there are other cues that you know, if I could go back to my 20s, I would tell myself to pay more attention to, because they tell you something about who you are, your values, and what you like, and those would be a good guide for you. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So we have about 1 minute left. So we're going to end on a little bit of a funner note. Funner, good use word, Nicole. Anyways, so if you have one sentence that you can tell me something that you just absolutely love about your job, you're really excited about your field that maybe is coming in the future, just something really exciting. Let's leave it on that note. I'll let you jump in.
Getting paid to learn.
Yes, that's awesome.
Knowing something that no one else knows.
Ooh, I love that. Love that.
Mine would be diversity and being able and trained to work in 6 or 7 different specialty labs and not having to make my mind up right now about what I want to do.
Oh, that is fantastic. Oh my gosh. Thank you. And you 3 were the only ones that actually stuck to my 1-sentence rule, whereas all the other groups kept going. Awesome. So thank you all so much. We are going to be playing a little outro video, but thank you all for joining us today. We would like to thank you for joining us today, and a huge thanks to our wonderful mentors for sharing their time and experiences with us today. We would also like to again thank our sponsors, Acuitas Therapeutics and SAP. It is because of them that we are able to put on great events like this. If you're interested in information about more events like this in the future, please visit www.SCWIST.ca or www.scienceworld.ca. If you would be interested in seeing any parts of this program again, the stream will stay active, and you can also find a recording of it on our YouTube page. Thank you for joining us today, and keep exploring.